Yeah, yeah, that's yeah, that's based on the third lecture of the course Rudolf Steiner gave in 1920. It's translated in Finnish, meditative arbeiten Menschenkunde in German.
Mm.
And in this third lecture, he is giving us a direction of developing ourselves in our work, um, because he wants us, he says to his pupil, to his students, no, to his teachers, he says, you are thinking the spiritual world, but you have to live it. So to integrate it in your daily life. And then he says, you have to study, you have to meditate, and you have to remember. And that's the basic thought of the method of helping developing yourself in order to do your work better. Because he says if you do so, then you will see that um, you are finding beautiful things during your work. But it's not so easy to understand what he's meaning. So I was working with it with my students in Holland for many years. And we developed a new path which is based on this expression. And Steiner says three things: study, meditate, remember, and we made seven of it. Seven is nice. Eh? We like seven too. Yeah. And the first thing is that if you want to do this exercise, the first thing is that we call it by a clock. That means you have to say to yourself, today I'm going to work in this way, and it will take 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, and then it's finished. And I'm preparing for my work for tomorrow. So tomorrow I have my children and in my class, and when um, I'm preparing what I'm going to do. But I start saying this is the time. Let's say now, as an example, 1 hour and a half or less. That's not interesting. And then the second step is that you start to study. So first of all, you do not look, what am I going to do tomorrow? But first you start to study. And Steiner says, study of man. That's the most inspiring work for teachers we can find. And in studying, that means that you have to make three steps. Studying is, the first step is you have to walk with the thought. So you have to no inner resistance. You just take the thought. The second one is, can I repeat the thought for myself? And the third step is, can I add some other thoughts? So to make it concrete, I always do it in this way. We take study of man and we look for one of these sentences. So as an example, now I take something from the fourth lecture, number, what shall we take? Number 2, the second sentence. You only can find the real essence of the will if you understand the relation between feeling and willing. Because will is the feeling which has grown, and feeling is the will which is hold it back. That's the sentence. So I take this sentence, say, now I'm going to study this sentence, not for hours, but for a short time. So first of all, I read it and I think, what is he saying? He's saying, if you want to understand the essence of the will, you can only find it if you combine willing and feeling. Because will is the expression of the feeling, and the feeling is the backholded will. So I try to repeat what he is saying. And then I think, yeah, but what is he saying? That has quite a lot of consequences if you look in this way to the process of the willing and the feeling. So now I'm going to add my own thoughts about it and think, oh, that's interesting. Why doesn't he talk about the thinking? He just is talking about the feeling and the willing process, and says if you want to understand this process, you have to make combinations. I can understand, because understanding is making relations to bring one thing in contact to another one. And then we have to the feeling and the willing part together. In education, that means that I have to look, how can I develop the feeling part and how can I work on the willing part. Of course, that's written in the rest of the book. Now I have completed my first step. I have been studying in this realm. So my second step, first step was the time, second step was the studying process, now has ended. So that most of the times it takes 5, 6, 7 minutes. And then you start to prepare for the next day. So you're going to look what am I going to do, which song shall we sing, which poem shall we say, which what story shall I tell tomorrow, what am I going to do during the main lesson, do I have other lessons? So I prepare and prepare and prepare until my clock is ringing. That's the end of my preparation. Whether I'm finished or not is not interesting. We have to trust on this way of working and say, okay, I'm finished for tomorrow. I still have some things to do, but my preparation has finished. That's a hard step, especially for melancholic people, because they always think, yeah, but it's not ready yet, and I have to think other things and more details. But trust the system. Say, okay, I stop preparing for tomorrow. And then I take the next step. I take the step of the meditation. That means I'm now going to meditate the subject I was studying before. So this sentence now must be meditated. That's not easy, because meditating here means that's what Steiner says to teachers. Meditating is warming with your heart what you have been thinking before. So you warm with your heart that's what you have been thinking. So now I have to warm with my heart the thought of the willing and the feeling which I studied before my preparation. But because we are so organized that most of the times, then we restart thinking. That's not what he wants. He wants this in your heart. So you can help yourself by doing something, by making, as an example, a drawing or making a picture. Behind me, you can see this beautiful colored picture. Yeah, that is the artistic way of the thoughts of the 14th lecture. And on the door, can you see there's something? I'll show you a little bit. I'm connected to Do you see? That's what I made of the sixth lecture. So
I can see. Yes, I see.
yes, you remember the drawing in the book, yeah. And in that way, I'm meditating the content of the thoughts I had before. And sometimes you have quite a lot of time, and then you make a picture. Sometimes you do not have so much time, and you make a small drawing, or you make a small poem, but not don't take hours for it. That's the meditation step. And then comes the most important step. After your meditation, you can do what you want, but you have to go to bed after a while because you have to sleep. And the sleep is one of the parts of this way of working. Because during the sleep, as we know, we take with us the things we have been thinking. That's what we studied. The things we felt. That's what is in my heart. And the things we did. That's preparing for the next day. And we take that with us to the spiritual world. Spiritual world is working on it, and next day it's given back to me. But it is given back in my willing part. So not in my thinking part, not in my brains, not in my heart, but it's in the willing part of the human being. And the will is asleep. So that means that in my actions is hidden the study and the preparation and the meditation of what I did yesterday. And I have, that's why Steiner calls it, names it remembering. He says you have to remember what is in your willing process during your work. So you're going to school, you're going to do your work, and if you did this way of preparation, you will see that you will do things which you did not prepare, which are, Steiner calls it the presence of the spirit. Suddenly you do things which you did not prepare, but which are the right things on the right moment with a special child. That's very interesting. That's amazing. That if you do so, you really find things. Is the experience not just of me, but of my students too. And then, as the seventh step, you have to look back to these moments. I called it catch the golden fishes of the day. So look, what did I do today? Which was something which came out of my will, which I did not prepare in that way, but was exactly the right thing to do. Those are the moments of the biggest joy of your work, because then if that happens, you feel, wow, that's exactly what has to be done. It's not me who is doing it, but I am the instrument of the work of the spiritual world, which is working with this child. And that gives energy. Steiner says if you do so, you don't get tired. If you have these moments of remembering, doing the right things, you're not getting tired of your work. So that means that you are more open. If you're not tired, you are more open for the influence of this spiritual world. So it's getting stronger and stronger. And if you do this regularly, not every day, but uh, rather often, then you discover in yourself that you are not getting tired of your work, but that you are finding more and more things which are the right things to do. That's interesting. So from three steps, we made 7. and we practice that in our works, and it really works. Yeah. You have to trust me. Try it, and then it really works. Steiner says if you do so, you in Germany says dan sprudelt Pädagogik heraus. That means that pedagogical action is coming out of you all the time, like a bottle which you have been shaking, so like a fountain of pedagogical interesting things. And that makes you enthusiastic and gives you the power to be interested in the world, to have initiatives in the world, to do the right things, and to be bright, nice, and kindly to the children. Which are the four forces which Steiner calls at the end of his course, which you have to develop. So in doing this, you educate yourself, but not in order to become better for yourself, but in order to become a better teacher, which is interesting. That during the sleep, there's worked on what I did the day before. Mm-hmm. When I fall asleep, then that's gone. It's gone to the spiritual world. When I wake up, it must wake up in me again. So otherwise I would restart every day, totally new. So it has to wake up again. And waking up again means that it's asleep. During daytime, our will is sleeping. Our feeling part is dreaming, and we are awake in our thinking part. But the result of this preparation and this meditation and this studying is laid in the willing part, not in the thinking part. Partly in the thinking part, but mostly in the willing part. And that must wake up. And Steiner says that if you do so, then that it's like remembering. That means it is asleep in you and wakes up, not by thinking, but in the doing process. So, as an example, I'm working in class 5. I have my children. We are doing arithmetic. One of my children in the front of the class is sitting there and she doesn't know what to do. So I try to help her and say, you can do this, but that doesn't help. I say, you can do this. That doesn't help too. Everyone knows these situations that you are trying and you think, oh, what's happening? I do not know what to do. So I'm hopeless in a way. And suddenly I say to her neighbor, please, can you help me? I can't tell her what she has to do. And her neighbor looks to this girl and says, oh, you have to do this. And then the girl says, oh, yes. And then she starts. What I remembered now is it's interesting and your job to try to help a child, but try it 3 times. And if that doesn't help, please look for help. So this was a golden fish I caught. And looking at it, I thought, oh, that's what was given to me, because I did not think at that moment, now I'm going to ask another child to do so, but that's what I did. But I recognized that I remembered it as an impulse from the work of yesterday. That's what Steiner calls erinnern, remembering. In doing the artistic work, of course, that's what I do. So that's a willing process, not a thinking process. Most of the times, there are quite a lot of meditations which you start out of your thinking and then go down to your heart. But you can also come from your willing part to your feeling part, to your heart. And in doing artistic things, Steiner said that it's helpful because doing artistic work gives joy every time. So that gives warm feelings. So you do something, but it's not just doing it, but it's deeply connected to the feeling part. And in order to help myself not to restart thinking and trying to meditate, I start doing things and bring that to my heart. That's also meditating, but a different way, which is described by Steiner in several. It's wonderful described by Jürgen Schmidt in his book Meditation. This artistic way of working. Because every time I see this painting, and I see nowadays I see it quite a lot of times, because when I'm zooming, I always see the painting on the wall, and it gives joy every time again, and that helps me to remember not to remember to have the feeling which was developed in doing so. Of course, you can also take the other way and say, I take the thought and try to meditate it in out of my thinking, bringing it to my heart. But it's easier to go the other way. But you can train yourself in the thinking hard way also, of course. Yeah. Does it mean that you can replace artistic work for meditation in general? But in this special way of working, it does. Yeah, the core things to remember is that what Steiner says in the first sentence of his study of man, that we have to realize that the work that we are doing is not just intellectual feeling part, but it has to do with spiritual and morality. That's the most important thing we have to remember all the time. That the connection to the spiritual world is something, not something that you think, or but that must be a reality in the work with your children. And also, on the other hand, that means that if the child is coming out of the spiritual world, as we did ourselves, but the child came later, so it had more chance to develop itself than we had. We had to develop ourselves in the physical world. That means that the last news from the spiritual world is brought by our children. So we have to develop ourselves in the way how can we read or remember the things which are coming now out of the spiritual world where we are every night, in order to deepen our work in a moral way. And morality means that we are not working for ourselves, but that we are working in trying to answer the question of the children, which we say every day. from heaven came down, this child, and we have to solve the riddle he gives us. And I think that's the most important thing of the self-development. Being aware of this spiritual world and the physical world. Both, that we are we are helping the children to not to forget that they are coming out from another world, but they have to be in this time, in this place, in this time on earth also. So that I think that's the balance. That's not so concrete, but that's developing a feeling. And in 1920, Steiner says the biggest and most productive instrument of a teacher are his feelings. So we have to develop this heart part of ourselves by studying and by doing.